Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. Today we have Willow. This is the original 1988 film from Lucasfilm. It is 2 hours and 6 minutes long, and yeah, this is. I have a confession to make. I've never seen this before. Today. Yeah. You would think that a guy who is very much into Star Wars, everything Lucasfilm, basically lives and breathes Star Wars, that I somehow, how could I have missed Willow in the theaters or even on VHS or DVD over the years? I guess I just was never around people that were into going to see this. And I didn't necessarily go to see movies by myself when I was younger. I, and I don't know. It just did. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's got Val Kilmer. It has Warwick Davis, who is Wicket W. Warwick from Return of the Jedi, and so I mean, Val Kilmer, Top Gun and Real Genius, and of course. Batman. He was one of many Batman in the '90s. So yeah, it's I don't know what it was that made me go, yeah, well, I can skip that. Oh yeah, it's directed by Ron Howard. This is one of his, I guess, earlier films. I think he may have directed television and some other things here and there after Happy Days, because that's kind of, I mean, he was Andy Griffith's show, and then Happy Days. He wasn't directing during his Andy Griffith era, but he was a little young. But yeah, so this is really strange. So what are my thoughts? It's a fantasy. It's very much a fantasy that that looks like it. Again, written, by the way, co-written by George Lucas, and let me get the other person's name, like a dummy, Bob Dolman. Uh, Bob Dolman, George Lucas wrote this. I guess it wasn't Star Wars, so I didn't see it. But it is in some ways. It has, again, because it's fantasy. It's not set on spaceships and other planets or anything else. It's set in a nondescript time in a fantasy world with sorcery and little people and trolls and apparently a two-headed dragon and warriors with swords and all swords and sorcery stuff. It's Star Wars. It comes from it's more of a fantasy series than it is a sci-fi series, despite its trappings. It's it's got everything that I liked about Star Wars. That I liked about Star Wars. I mean, honestly, yeah, it doesn't have the spaceships, but it has all the character elements. We got Willow. We got this Joseph Campbell hero getting the call, rejecting it, reluctantly having to take on this task of returning a baby to the humans, the tall giant people, that had returned them, and not knowing who to give it to or why it's lost and why it ended up in their hands in the first place. And he takes on this quest. And of course, along the way, he meets various other characters, like a certain scoundrel played by Val Kilmer. It's very okay. We basically have Luke Skywalker meeting Han Solo. We have a wizard right in the beginning, by the way, who gives him his mission. Very Obi-Wan Kenobi. At one point, he meets another wizard who is not all she appears to be. She's very small and strange, like Yoda. Then and along the way, because she's limited, he has to try to transform her back to her human self, because she's a very powerful wizard. And eventually that wizard has to go up against the very powerful queen, could be the emperor, who has a enforcer, a very scary looking man clad in black with a scary helmet. Could be Darth Vader. Oh, and there's also, by the way, a stubborn, obstinate princess who clashes immediately with the scoundrel Han Solo, and they butt heads until they realize they're in love with each other. And she's actually one of the bad guys until she's not. There's all sorts of things that can be found in this film that connect directly to Star Wars. We got two very small sidekicks that are basically there for comedic effect. They're just, they sound like Ewoks, by the way, when they laugh. It's not an accident. I'm pretty sure Ben Burt. Ben Burt also did the sound effects for all the Star Wars films and Indiana Jones and all that other stuff. One of the things that's different about this from Star Wars, I'm going to keep comparing it to Star Wars, it's just the way it is the fact there's no John Williams score. This is James Horner. And while James Horner, not taking anything away from James Horner kind of, you can feel a little bit of John Williams in this, a little bit. But it's mainly James Horner stealing from himself. There are elements of these. He loves the horns. Again, James Horner. I've heard. This is a known thing. It's not something I've made up. I could hear a little bit of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. There's just elements of the sound, the music. I mean, I realize to untrained ear, which I am, probably can't tell one soundtrack from the other. They all sound the same. But I've listened to the sound of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, a billion times. And a friend of mine who is much more versed in all of this agrees. He knows how Horner borrows from himself liberally on nearly every soundtrack he makes. Nothing against him, just the way it is. So we just got a very familiar setup in a fantasy world. It meanders a little bit. It gets a little chaotic. The effects are surprisingly have not aged well. Even though it's 1988, it's probably done by ILM. It's probably done. I'm sure it's done by ILM. I can't imagine George Lucas going, you know what, Lucasfilm's not going to go with ILM this time. No. It's got to be, if I'm wrong, please tell me, but it's got to be ILM. And a lot of these effects do not work themselves out. They just, like when the little people are, say, in the backpack or the pouch of somebody carrying them, it looks really bad. I mean, they use everything from the green screen or blue screen at the time. They use puppets for the dragon heads. They use stop motion animation for when Willow is battling against a coffee table or something. I couldn't really tell why it had really long legs. I must have looked away when that thing came to life. I don't know. I did get myself a really nice weighted blanket, and I put myself under it while I was sitting on laying on the couch watching it, and I may have gotten a little bit too comfortable. It's a Black Friday deal. So anyway, Warwick Davis, obviously Willow, he is the center of this, and they're just about to release tomorrow the brand new Willow series. It follows up with these characters and some others many years later. Disney Plus original, so it's gonna happen. So that's what we're watching tomorrow, by the way. I know I skipped ahead on that, but yeah, I guess when it comes to down to all this, I wanted to like it more. I really did, but I just it's not like the kind of thing that just made me go, wow, I can't believe I missed this all this time. That I didn't experience this. Maybe I think if I'd seen it in the theaters, and maybe the second screening, a second viewing usually helps me appreciate these things more. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that I think maybe I expect a little bit more from it than what it gave me. It's like I said, it's an early film from Ron, and it's some of the dialogue. Oh, again, one of the things I just totally skipped out on when I was talking about earlier. I'm sorry for jumping around, but when I got into the special effects and everything else, when I was comparing characters to Star Wars, the two little people, the tiny people, like not little people like Warwick Davis, but there's little people that stand about this big, and I don't know if that's a joke or I don't know. Like it's, hey, the little people are the big people in this film. Anyway, the little people, one of which is Kevin Pollak, Uh, they're R2D2 and C3PO. They give funny little commentary. They have bicker and they fight and they give all the little zingers. So yeah, we got Luke, we got Han. Are we missing a Chewbacca that I? Is there a Chewbacca that I missed out on? That I just blanked out on? There is a guy that is helpful. He's a good friend of Mad Mardigan's who joins the battle, but he's not like a non-verbal, non-English speaking beast. He's just another warrior in the army. I don't know. By the way, and the whole plot of this is that it's told in text at the beginning, just like an old classic, you know, fairy tale type of fantasy story. It also feels like a sort of a Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings kind of thing. But in this case, there's a prophecy about a young woman being born, a baby being born, and that would destroy the queen or something, and the queen demands, like King Herod, it's a very biblical thing, decides to have all the young babies, all the mothers everybody who's pregnant is gathered up, and when they give birth, when they have a little girl, well, they're supposed to take care of it. They bring them as part of a ritual. Well, they sneak it out, and that's how the hobbits, Willow's people, Willow's family specifically, he has a wife and kids. They end up with the baby and the mission. So yeah, it's very Joseph Campbell down to the letter, and that's not surprising because it's George Lucas. So I think a lot of the things, maybe some of the decisions he wanted to make in Star Wars that he would like to have incorporated, but in a condensed single film, pretty much all happened in this. I'm wondering why this didn't have a sequel. I mean, it's just the kind of thing, if George Lucas makes something back in those days, people were like, oh, make more because we like money. I don't know, maybe it didn't do too well at the box office, where they were just like, it didn't go so well, so let's not make more of them. But I don't know. I mean, people were begging him to do more Star Wars at the time, and he was like, I'm done, I want to do other stuff. So, and he didn't direct this, so it's just a thing. So, hey, and Ron Howard's has a long legacy with Lucasfilm, and his daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, is a voice of Yaddle in the new Tales of the Jedi thing, and she's directed a bunch of episodes of The Mandalorian, and I think at least one episode of the Book of Boba Fett, so there's a big just family connection between Star Wars and Willow and everything else between all the people. So yeah, that's all I can really say about that. But yeah, I think I'm going to give it another shot, and of course I'm going to watch. I chose this specifically because I had not seen it before, and I knew I was going to watch the Willow series tomorrow, and that's the reason why I'm doing this now. So I had to watch it. So yeah, so I'll give you my feedback tomorrow on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge with the Willow series. I'll see you then.